midday sun over Tokyo suddenly vanishes, eclipsed by a colossal, ominous black shadow rising from the distant west. Air raid sirens scream across the city, mixing with a deafening, thunderous explosion that tears through everyone's eardrums. The massive skyscrapers in the Shinjuku district shake violently, swaying dangerously like fragile toys facing a hurricane force. Tons of tempered glass shards rain down from towers, slicing through the asphalt streets below like deadly hail. Chaotic crowds stampede across the famous Shibuya crossing, realizing with horror that there is absolutely no escape route left. A massive wall of searing hot gas and thick volcanic ash races down the mountain slopes at supersonic speeds. Temperatures of 1,000 degrees devour lush green forests, instantly turning them into charcoal dust in a split second. Tokyo Tower, the symbol of prosperity, bends under terrifying heat, its steel frame glowing red before snapping in half. The colossal structure collapses onto surrounding residential buildings, creating a massive explosion of dust that obscures the entire sky. The subway system transforms into concrete coffins as glowing molten lava floods aggressively into the dark underground tunnels. The ground cracks open, forming deep abysses that instantly swallow cars trapped in heavy traffic on the highway. This is not a science fiction movie, but a brutal reality unfolding right before our eyes at this moment. This is the absolute worst-case scenario predicted by geologists when the iconic volcano wakes up from its long sleep. After sleeping for over 300 years, the energy accumulation has reached a limit that can no longer hold. There is absolutely no retreat for millions of citizens when disaster strikes with such dizzying and terrifying speed. Human preparation becomes completely meaningless in the face of the absolute fury unleashed by this planet right now. A gigantic mushroom-shaped cloud rises tens of kilometers high, completely blocking out all sunlight from the entire region. The air is quickly replaced by sharp glass dust, making every single breath a painful form of torture. Eternal darkness engulfs Tokyo, turning the world's most modern city into a dead land within mere minutes. Welcome to Tokyo's Judgment Day, where civilization collapses completely in just 15 short minutes of pure destruction. Sunrise over Lake Kawaguchi. The sacred mountain casts a reflection on the water, calm like a mirror. Happy tourists take souvenir photos, completely unaware of the devastating tragedy that is about to strike them. Deep tens of kilometers underground, an ancient monster is stirring and waking up from its long sleep. At the seismic center, data recording needles begin to oscillate wildly, as if possessed by a ghost. Seismic frequency skyrockets from 10 to 500 times in just one single short hour of time. Birds from old forests fly up in chaos, forming black clouds that completely cover the bright sky. Deer and wild boars panic and run desperately onto asphalt roads, invading the quiet residential areas below. The water of Lake Kawaguchi begins bubbling sulfur gas, turning murky gray and emitting thick white steam. Water temperature rises so fast it boils thousands of fish, their bodies floating aimlessly on the surface. The ground on the eastern slope swells 2 meters due to magma pressure compressed to the absolute maximum. Scientists at the observation station stare at screens, their faces turning pale with absolute terror and shock. The J-Alert early warning system immediately broadcasts the highest level emergency notification across the entire nation. Millions of phones in Tokyo vibrate simultaneously, creating a terrifying sound like a disturbed nest of hornets. People stop walking, looking at each other in confusion, before the ground beneath their feet starts shaking. A blast rips through space, louder than any sound human beings have ever heard in their lives. The white snow-capped peak is completely blown away, leaving behind a gigantic, gaping black crater of destruction. The first column of ash shoots straight up into the sky at supersonic speed, piercing white clouds. An invisible shockwave sweeps through the forests, snapping tens of thousands of tree trunks like fragile matchsticks. In towns at the mountain's foot, building windows shatter simultaneously before the sound even arrives there. A gigantic gray-black mushroom cloud rises 20 kilometers high, touching the stratosphere and dominating the horizon. The clear blue sky suddenly turns pitch black, as if someone just turned off the sun's switch. Purple volcanic lightning bolts slash across the black cloud, creating a scene of hell on Earth. In Tokyo, residents look west, where the horizon is now a solid wall of absolute darkness. The first ash particles begin to fall onto the white shirt sleeve of a shocked office worker. Traffic on the highway is paralyzed. Thousands of drivers abandon cars and run in utter panic. Air raid sirens echo throughout the city, signaling the end of peaceful days for everyone living here. The massive ash cloud is swallowing satellite cities one by one on its way to the capital. No flights are allowed to take off. The sky over Japan is officially and completely locked down. The massive ash column collapses under gravity, forming a deadly pyroclastic flow rushing down the slopes. The cascade of fire moves at Formula One speeds, flattening absolutely everything standing in its destructive path. Ancient forests vaporize instantly as temperatures of 1,000 degrees sweep across them in a flash. Luxury lakeside resorts are crushed into fine dust in mere seconds by the unstoppable wall of force. Lake Kawaguchi water evaporates instantly, leaving behind a dry, cracked lakebed filled with scorching hot mud. Not a single living creature can survive when this hellish firestorm sweeps directly over their physical bodies. In Tokyo, 100 kilometers away, the sky turns from gray to a terrifying shade of blood red. Volcanic hail begins to fall, turning into red-hot stones the size of a grown man's clenched fist. Flaming stones shatter the glass of modern high-rise office buildings, raining shards down onto the streets below. Fire erupts inside offices as hot stones fall onto carpets and papers, igniting flames instantly and violently. Pedestrians on the streets scream as scorching hot hail strikes their heads and shoulders with brutal force. Cars stuck in traffic have roofs pierced by falling rocks. Fuel tanks explode, creating massive fireballs instantly. Thick ash quickly covers the city, reaching 10 centimeters deep within the very first hour of disaster. The air becomes thick as mud. Citizens cough violently and collapse due to the lack of clean oxygen. The citywide power grid fails as wet, conductive ash shorts out massive electrical substations across the region. Darkness engulfs the capital of light. Only the glow from raging fires illuminates the terrifying urban landscape. A high-speed Shinkansen train derails violently because the tracks are deformed by the intense ground heat. Train cars fly off the tracks, crashing into roadside residential areas like gigantic metal bullets, causing destruction. At Haneda Airport, taking off plane engines ingest volcanic ash and fail immediately mid-air with a loud bang. The massive plane falls freely onto the runway, exploding into a sea of fire lighting up the sky. The famous Rainbow Bridge is covered in black smoke, suspension cables shaking violently and about to snap apart. Traffic stuck on the bridge turns into mobile ovens, baking the trapped people inside their metal vehicles. The Sumida River turns into thick gray mud, washing boats and debris out to the vast open ocean. Tokyo Skytree is barely visible in the dust fog, standing like a giant ghost guarding the doomed city. At Shibuya Crossing, crowds trample each other to escape, but have no idea which direction is safe anymore. Hot, flowing mud pours down subway entrances, instantly turning the stations into deadly traps for everyone inside. Passengers in the station scream as the scalding hot mud flow rushes in, sweeping away everything in its path. Sports arena roofs collapse inward because they cannot withstand the immense heavy weight of the thick ash layer. Old districts with wooden houses catch fire, spreading rapidly, with no water available to extinguish the raging flames. Fire trucks get stuck in ash piles. Firefighters watch helplessly as flames devour the city they protect. Hospitals lose power completely. Ventilators stop working. Cries of grief echo through the dark and crowded corridors. Microscopic glass dust invades people's lungs, shredding alveoli and causing severe internal bleeding with every single breath. Flimsy medical masks become completely useless against this deadly thick concentration of volcanic dust and toxic gas. Thousands of suffocated birds fall from the sky, scattered across the streets like dead leaves in autumn. Volcanic lightning strikes the TV tower, sending sparks flying wildly into the pitch-black night of the city. The famous bronze Hachiko statue is covered in ash, looking like a fossilized creature from prehistoric times. Fashion store windows shatter, mannequins fall over in heaps looking disturbingly like piles of human corpses. Atmospheric steam condenses with ash, creating a sticky black mud rain falling heavily onto the destroyed city. Survivors trudge through the mud rain, their entire bodies covered in a terrifying gray shell of wet ash. Urban noise vanishes, replaced entirely by the continuous low-frequency growl of the angry mountain in the distance. An expressway overpass collapses onto the road below, crushing dozens of parked trucks under tons of concrete. An oil tanker in Tokyo Bay loses direction, crashes into the port, causing a horrific chemical explosion. Yellow toxic smoke from the explosion mixes with ash clouds, creating a new deadly cocktail of gas. The Japanese Diet building stands firm, but is surrounded by a sea of fire and ash on all sides. Rescue helicopters try to land, but rotor blades are eroded by abrasive ash, so they must turn back. Tokyo is completely isolated from the outside world, becoming a dead island in a vast sea of ash. The desperate eyes of a young woman looking through the shattered glass window of a ruined coffee shop. The city's largest public clock stops exactly at the moment the disaster reaches its peak of destruction. Seen from above, Tokyo looks like the surface of Mars, glowing red and devoid of any life. Night and ash swallow the final image of this magnificent modern civilization into total and absolute darkness. Underground stations turn into giant suffocation chambers as ventilation systems stop working completely, trapping thousands in the dark. Panic spreads like a virus as terrified crowds trample each other, desperately trying to reach the only exit. Sulfur levels rise, making the air poisonous, burning the lungs of every single person breathing in the dust. Surface traffic is paralyzed completely. Ambulances are stuck hopelessly in the middle of a sea of metal vehicles. Convenience stores are smashed open. Citizens fight each other for every single bottle of clean water left inside. The telecommunications network collapses. Millions of phones become useless bricks with absolutely no signal available for anyone anywhere. Data centers overheat and shut down automatically, wiping out billions of pieces of important human data instantly, forever. The Tokyo Stock Exchange plunges into darkness. Electronic boards go black, signaling the total collapse of the economy. Tap water in households turns pitch black because volcanic ash has infiltrated the main city water storage tanks. Upstream ash fills reservoirs, putting terrifying pressure on the hydroelectric dams that are struggling to hold the weight. The dam bursts open, releasing a massive mud flood that sweeps away tiny villages located downstream instantly. Survivors climb onto high rooftops, looking down at the city, which is now a sea of dead ash. They are completely isolated, with no food, no water, surrounded only by death and dirt on all sides. The cries of children echo in the dark night, but no one has the strength to comfort them anymore. Field hospitals are overwhelmed. Doctors are forced to make the most heartbreaking life and death decisions right on the spot. Medical oxygen runs out. Respiratory patients slowly fade away amidst the helplessness of their grieving loved ones nearby. Rescue efforts by sea fail because ship engines are heavily damaged by abrasive volcanic ash clogging the intake. The military is mobilized, but tanks and armored vehicles cannot move in the excessively thick layer of ash. People trying to walk out of the city collapse by the roadside due to exhaustion and severe poisoning. Ancient wooden architectural buildings collapse completely under the immense weight of the ash accumulated on their heavy roofs. The imperial palace sinks into darkness. Beautiful gardens are now just a desolate wasteland of gray dust. People write their last dying messages on dusty glass windows, hoping someone will read them later in the future. The space is terrifyingly silent. Only the wind whistling through shattered, soulless windows remains in the dead city. Temperatures begin to drop sharply. The volcanic winter phenomenon starts to envelop this dead land in freezing cold. Survivors huddle together for warmth, sharing the little fragile hope that remains in their hearts and minds. On international news, the map of Japan is colored bright red, signaling a special disaster zone for the world. Neighboring countries close air borders, fearing the massive ash cloud will spread globally and affect their own populations. An abandoned police car, lights still spinning weakly, illuminates motionless bodies lying on the ash-covered street. Human helplessness before nature is confirmed. Thousands of years of civilization are wiped out in just one day. Tokyo sinks into eternal sleep under thick ash, waiting centuries to be excavated again by future generations.